If you have any issues or questions about anything, as always, feel free to reach out to Carrie or to me with questions or suggestions about this or future meetings and anything about what you would like to see in future. Moving on. So today we're going to hear about a lot of different things, very packed. We even moved some things to a future meeting because we have so much going on. So we're going to hear about the equitable commute project, this micromobility project. We're going to see the final versions of the policy proposals. Many of you have seen and read multiple versions of those already. Going to learn about what KBCC is doing in terms of student personas and more about how that can be used in other ways. And we're going to hear from Councilmember Gennaro, who chairs the Environmental Protection Committee and the work that he and his colleagues are doing. Proceed. So really straightforward on the same order that we were talking about today. First, we're going to hear a bit more about the work on the city cleanup corps that Jen had spoken about in a previous meeting, and hear about the first things coming out of the City Council Committee on Economic Development that Kathleen had mentioned in a previous meeting. Some of you may have gotten a chance to attend that virtual hearing. If not, going to learn about some of the work that they're going into doing. For the moment, we're going to start actually with an icebreaker and to both get everyone connected and to learn a little bit more about what you're thinking in terms of what's happening with all changes. So our icebreaker question is, if we can go to the next slide. Now technology is being difficult. So we have three quick questions for our little session. Obviously, the most important one is what your favorite pizza topping is. Then how the Great Resignation has affected your work, which could be your own work or your partner's, or perhaps it hasn't affected your work at all, and whether it's now over. And that could be whether it's what you're seeing in your own individual recruitment, or what you're hearing about from your partners, or what you're seeing in statistics. So we're going to break out into breakout rooms for that. Anyone who has any issues in terms of getting into the room, feel free to stay back in the main room and we will get you set up and helped, or answer any other questions that you may have.
My group only got through one. So and it was me, so I will not summarize.
I see Christine has her hand up.
I just want to state that in our group, we got through all three very interesting pizza toppings, but something that someone in the group said, and then I echoed, is that, you know, we're calling it not so much the Great Resignation anymore, but the Great Exploration. That we're really finding this is a time that people are not settling. They want to explore. So yeah, they'll take that job but leave in 4 months because a better opportunity has come up, or they don't want to settle, or there's more flexibility. So as a higher education institution, I have to try to rework that. It's not about resignation. It's about people wanting better and more. So how can we train for them, and how can we provide for them?
That's excellent.
In our group, I was also in Gasper's, but Jennifer Mitchell brought up a point and right at the end, getting cut off around recruitment and some challenges around recruitment. And given that there's so many opportunities for employment and also for training, right? There's been an influx of funding for different trainings, and we've experienced that. I do see it. I think as a positive, because some of the pressures it puts on is like, do you offer a stipend? Do you, support while in training? And so it's kind of like bringing the level of supports up for all of our constituents, and I think like the funding community too is looking at it and seeing like, oh, well, this is now a necessary part of funding.
Thanks, Mike. I think in the interest of time, if anyone else has key things to share, put them in chat. But I want to make sure that we have time to hear about key updates. So I'm going to switch over to Jennifer Mitchell. Jen has been keeping up to date with what's happening in terms of the city efforts to revamp or recreate the city cleanup corps, city climate corps, civilian climate corps. I'm not sure what the final version of the Cs will probably end up being, but Jen will be able to tell us about what's new or what's maybe happening. Or she's shaking her head, maybe not too much is new.
Hi, exactly. Good morning, everybody. Jennifer Mitchell from the HOPE program. Glad to be here with all of you this morning. So yeah, I think that the reason I was shaking my head is there is nothing much that's new and nothing more that's known. We are keeping this on the agenda on a regular basis leading up to the city budget for the next year, because we know it's an important, or was an important funding source this year for a lot of people and allowed people to do some new and creative things with their programming. And so it's important, and we want to make sure that if we learn something about what's going on, that this group is also the first to know, since many of us are impacted. But I had a conversation with Chris Neal last night, so it's kind of hot off the presses. And for those of you who don't know, Chris Neal is the acting executive director of the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development. And he really was pretty honest and transparent that there's no concrete news yet. OMB hasn't made any decisions or hasn't shared any decisions. They expect to hear at the latest by the end of the month when the executive budget comes out. But if they hear something sooner, he said he'd be willing to share it. And I guess the unfortunate news, but I think that we all have to be prepared for it, or those of us who have cleanup corps funding, is that even if it does get in next year's budget, it sounds like it'll be significantly reduced funding. And so, you know, if you're in a position like we are, that kind of means that, you know, if you want to keep doing the programming you've been doing using cleanup corps money, start looking around for some other sources to support it as well. And I think the sooner folks know that, the better. And so, you know, as I said, we'll keep you posted. Nothing concrete right now. And Chris is, you know, slightly pessimistic about what the capacity will be. And so we'll keep this on the agenda for the meetings moving forward. And if anyone here has any other information to share, please, you know, take yourself off mute and share it, or share it in the chat. But that's the latest from the city so far.
Thanks, Jen. Hope, fingers crossed. We're going to go then straight to Kathleen Colhane from NYCHA, who's going to tell us a bit about what's happening with the City Council's Committee on Economic Development. Kathleen.
Hi all, and sorry if I cut out here. I'm having some issues this morning, but I just wanted to do a quick thank you to folks that were able to join us to testify. We testified to the Committee on Economic Development chaired by Amanda Faria on March 21st, and it was hearing oversight and investigations chaired by Councilmember Gail Brewer, and it was on the city's evolving workforce development plans in the wake of the pandemic. And we had a number of folks testify from here and elsewhere in our community. So I want to thank you all. Talk about the positives of the blueprint for the city on workforce development, but also the lack of plans and how we move forward. We focus on need to continue to invest in recovery.
Kathleen, you're breaking up
In program
more than we
pretty
can
badly.
hear.
Okay.
Sorry, Kathleen. As
Kathleen,
always,
you can
technology
put up
is
your
fickle.
video.
Maybe in the interest of time, we'll go to the next part, and then if Kathleen's connection stabilizes, we'll come back to that. But I want to make sure that we get a chance to hear properly from Damien, from the HOPE program, who's going to tell us a bit about the equitable commute project.
Great. Thanks, David. I'm just going to share my screen really quick. All right. So can everybody see that? I'm good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to set up here. Yes, good morning. So my name is Damien Fagan, Venture Director at the HOPE program in the Sustainable South Bronx. We are part of a coalition of groups that have put forward funding application to NYCHA called the Equitable Commute Project. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the elements that brought this project up. Screen. So this is the problem we're looking to solve for. This is an example of a commute in the Bronx for a nurse who lives in Soundview, commuting 4 miles to Montefiore. So she walks 3 blocks to the bus, takes the bus to the subway where she switches, and there's a 7-minute walk. So this is a 2.5-hour commute every day. Looking at the map, you can see that a bike cuts that in half with 30 minutes, an e-bike cuts that to 20 minutes. Another example, this is Justin, who works at the living room. So he's connected to Bronx Works, which we do a lot of work with. And his current bus commute is 70 minutes. So he leaves at 4:50 in the morning from Tremont Avenue and arrives at work at 6 a.m. An e-bike as well would cut his commute in half. What we do know is that cars aren't the answer here. A lot of essential workers, frontline workers don't own or can't afford cars. Not only that, the city can't really handle any more cars at this point. Streets are gridlocked. And what we found in the first year of this building out this program is that demand is there. Early engagement with institutions like the Urban Health Plan and Montefiore identified more than 600 interested frontline employees who would prefer e-bike access, e-scooter access to get to work. So an equitable mobility solution for New York City, for the cities within reach, and that involves e-bikes and e-scooters, which are socially distanced, convenient, reliable. They're accessible to people of all ages and fitness levels, and they can travel longer distances with electric assist. They're 30 times cheaper to buy, store, and maintain than a used car, healthier and more sustainable option for the rider and the city. So the Equitable Commute Project, very straightforwardly, is a project to provide electric commute options to frontline workers in the Bronx and Brooklyn. We do this by increasing ownership in micromobility through 3 primary methods. The first is fleet discounts and innovative finance. We negotiate discounts with e-bike and e-scooter manufacturers and distributors. We advance microloans to borrowers without traditional credit history. And then NYCHA subsidizes 50% of the purchase price. An example of this in a recent pilot we did in October, I'm forgetting the name of that bike. What was it? A really nice e-bike. It costs about $3,000. And through this combination of subsidies and finance and innovative financing, a borrower could borrow maybe $950 to get that bike and pay it off over the course of 10 months. So it reduced it by 66%, the upfront cost. The second way we do this is through outreach and education. We partner with community-based organizations to promote economic mobility through micromobility. That just means, a lot of cases standing outside some of these employers and talking to people about e-bikes and e-scooters. It also means partnering with employers, frontline worker employers, and talking to them about providing this option to their employees, the same way they might have provided subsidized subway cards to their employees to get to work. And the third and final way we do this is kind of where the HOPE program comes in, is workforce development. Our work in this, as part of this project, is to prepare workers who face barriers to employment for jobs in this space. Primarily right now, that looks like preparing people for jobs in e-bike mechanic work and lithium battery handling. Some of the impact we hope to have through the Equitable Commute Project: distributing 5,000 subsidized micromobility vehicles. The average commuting time saved every day would be 5,000 hours, 440 metric tons of emissions reduced annually, creating 200 new direct and indirect green jobs, and through our advocacy and our example, incentivizing up to $100 million in incentives for e-bike and e-scooter ownership. Some of our partners listed here, the accessible finance portion, we partnered with Spring Bank is our financier, a CDFI and a B Corp in the Bronx. They're providing low interest loans to underbanked and folks without credit history to access e-bikes and e-scooters. Brown Bike Girl is a partner of Equitable Commute Project as well, developing safe riding training program. A lot of these people have never ridden e-bikes, and so getting them up to speed on how to ride these things around the city is critical, obviously, for safety. HOPE program, obviously providing the jobs, the workforce development training in mechanic work, and then partnering with UNI and other local vendors to provide secure and modular parking solutions for these e-bikes. A few more members of the team of the Equitable Commute Project. Transportation Alternatives is the lead. NYU Stern is doing a lot of the corporate engagement. Pareto-based strategies, Electric Avenue, leading a lot of the policy development work and project management. Empire Clean Cities, and Spring Bank again. And so this is where we are in the process at the moment. The NYCHA application, we're in the second phase of it. There are 6, I believe, other or groups of applicants that are in this pool in the second phase across the state. 3 groups will be awarded the $7 million to move forward with their project. And we hope to have updates about that in June when we make our final pitch. Some lessons learned so far. We've done a pilot, handed out about 15 to 20 bikes at a pilot event we had last year, and learned a lot about how to distribute these bikes and how and the logistics of doing so. We've also been doing a lot of work, preliminary work, investigative work into what the jobs look like in e-bike mechanic work. It's a very informal sector at the moment, growing pretty quickly, but a lot of people fall into bike mechanic work as sort of hobbyists. They buy a bike and they start messing with it, and they have to learn a lot to maintain that bike. And that's kind of how the bike mechanics I've talked to fell into the work. But with e-bikes, we're finding that there has to be a little bit more formalized training that goes into that, because you're talking about lithium batteries. There's some safety requirements there. There's also just they're more complicated machines. And so folks will need some sort of technical and foundational training to begin doing e-bike mechanic work. And so we're in the beginning phases of designing that curriculum and planning it out. And we're going to be hosting a couple of focus groups with people in a few weeks at our Garrison Avenue site to begin exploring, begin getting feedback on, is our community interested in these jobs? And what we'll need to do to bring them up to speed over 8 to 10 week period to become e-bike mechanics. And so the ultimate goal, as I mentioned before, of the partnerships we're looking to develop at the moment, we are looking for distribution partners, so employers who employ frontline workers in Brooklyn and the Bronx, who would like to offer this service to their employees. That could be hospital systems. It could also be nonprofits, service providers, community organizations. Partnering with us looks like a letter of support. But if you're interested in hearing more and getting more involved with the Equitable Commute Project, We are currently doing a lot of that outreach, and I can be reached at my email there, dfagan@thehopeprogram.org. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Damien. I think we have time for one spoken question. Obviously, if anyone has additional questions, we can put them in the chat and get answers to everything. Okay, I'm going to take that as everyone is cool putting their questions in the chat. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go right ahead to the next section.
A question in chat. A couple of questions in chat.
Oh yeah, Tony, we are, it's Brooklyn and the Bronx is where we're primarily working. So we are working with partners in Brooklyn as well.
And I would just add about that, Tony, the first 5,000, our goal is to give out in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and then lay the groundwork for getting even more and spreading the program out in all 5 boroughs. And also, we actually talked to lots of folks about scaling this in other areas too, not the HOPE program part, but getting e-bikes into the hands of essential workers. So there's definitely potential for more boroughs in future years.
I love that you guys are doing this, and I met with Seedco last week, and I'm pretty sure they'd be interested in talking to you about this initiative to support businesses, employees who are super commuters for retention purposes. And you know, also just the simple fact, yeah, and that this this is a really important, I believe, a really important part of the green economy. So I'm really happy that you guys are taking steps in this direction.
Transportation justice is part of environmental justice. And then someone I saw had a question, I feel like, about safety and data. Yeah, Mike, it was. So we are actually, HOPE is a small part of this whole big collaboration, and transportation alternatives is the lead. And then NYU is really taking the lead in data collection of all sorts, from usage to, if they get stolen to if they get into accidents and all of that. So yes, there is a huge data component to this whole project.
And before we go on to the next section, I see that Eric has his hand up. Presume something better said verbally.
Yeah, sometimes I'm a little better at that. Hey, amazing ideas and work here. My hat's off to you. Can you speak a little bit about the charging infrastructure that's required for this, if any, or are folks charging these in their homes?
Yeah, they can be charged fairly quickly at home.
Just on a regular 120 volt outlet?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. That's exciting. I'll send you an email. I have a lot more questions. Very excited about what you're doing here.
Great. That actually provides a nice seg to the next section, because we're going to talk one last time about policy proposals. I'm going to do a quick recap. I know a bunch of you have heard about these way too much. As most of you know, we have a policy and advocacy working group has many long-term plans, but with the new mayoral administration coming in, we tried to get some key policies in for New York City specific policies in for then Mayor-elect Adams' transition team. Got 7 in mid-December, then had to go and, we wanted to get additional feedback from everyone, really revise those, make them great. Once we're done with that hectic rush. So we got tons of feedback from chats and breakout rooms and emails and surveys. I took everything that everyone sent, tried to incorporate all of that. Then we did versions 2, which went out to the strategy team and P&A team. So we ended up with these, and no need to read all these now if you have not already. I'm going to put in the super top level descriptions of what these are. Just for now, to save time, to just talk about the one key thing that changed, which was really more of a focus on resiliency and safety in terms of what these policies were doing. In some cases, that didn't actually mean any changes to the policies, but really changes in explaining how these policies would help New Yorkers, either in general times or in times of extreme heat or extreme flooding or things like that. Before I talk further, now, do you want to jump in and add what you have on any of these parts?
Yeah, so thank you so much. David has been really great about leading some of this. But in terms of, where we are now, there is definitely, looking at the local law and creating of the jobs, and again, connecting to looking at the climate core, which is a standing agenda for the Gen group, but also viable opportunities we've seen in terms of making inroads from initial job creation to hopefully career pathways. And then and I'm just reading off the chat here, reading off the emissions and connecting to new energy bills. We all know that there have been a lot of proposals that we're a part of, but making sure there's alignment and investment as a part of those bills, and workforce development as a way to bring about equity and inclusion and just overall partnerships. So a lot of more on coordination and making sure that, again, there's an opportunity to bring in, and we talked about the public housing and unifying, turning NYCHA into kind of a sustainability leader, given some of the partnerships in the public-private partner sector. I'm probably butchering all of it, also trying to get past this cold. But David has been doing a really great job at synthesizing a lot of this information. And our hope is to, again, bring this forward, and we'll be working with the strategy group, but also with the policy group on ensuring that the long-term policies are aligned with these very short kind of low-hanging fruit, and making sure that we also, as a next step, have talked about aligning and leveraging the other subgroups in the working group, so that as there's work going on, that there's alignment, and that the other groups are also moving parts of the agenda forward as they're working on their specific items.
And I should add that I still have to reach out to some of you. There are a bunch of you who gave feedback that I incorporated in here, and I've not let you know that I incorporated your feedback into making these better. So to be very clear, read everything that everyone sent about everything. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go too deeply into all of these, so anyone can check these out later. What I do want us to start thinking about, and we definitely do not have time to go into this deeply today, but think about to what extent and which ways we want to try to turn these policies into reality, either collectively and, of course, individually, any of your entities. That can mean, it can mean a open letter in the form of a just single page website. It can mean op-eds. It can mean when talking, when either testifying at or participating in city council meetings and hearings, talking about these things. So just want to, since we have a little bit of time, just want to open up for any questions or suggestions about the proposals, the process, or the potential next steps of making these proposals into reality.
David, I wanted to highlight one thing that actually already happened. So one of your recommendations, in fact, already came true. That is the one about unifying New York's sustainability resiliency efforts under one team. Now we have the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, which does exactly that.
Thank you, Ellie. And I'm excited. I've seen already some of the work coming out of the office. Is it now being called MOCEJ? Is it being called MOCEJ? Is that still to be determined?
I hear a lot of different things. I've been spelling it out, each letter for now, but I'm sure we'll get abbreviated at some point to one syllable.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see what comes out of that, and which of the, I know there were a bunch of plans that were initially put forward last year. I'm curious to see which of those gets moved forward or changed this year. So very interesting things. For those of you who missed a meeting 1 or 2 meetings ago and hadn't heard about this, there's the big news that Mayor Adams unified all these various offices, and not just unified, but restructuring. So lots of exciting work happening, but also, I think, Ellie, fair to say, unclear exactly which plans will be prioritized in which ways this year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Anyone else about anything? I think Josephine has something to add.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Josephine Melendez from NYCHA. My colleague Lanice and I reviewed the proposal, and so she's unable to join at this time, but we were excited to be on the proposal, strong presence. The one thing that it's important to note is the number of jobs that were slated in our section. And it's really important to just acknowledge that working with any city agency, there's definitely a lot of layers. And so with those layers come work qualifications and all the different elements of qualifying. So we thought that this could be a section that we could share with our other city agency partners, so that there's equal contribution as well as diversity in the opportunity. And then a point that I wanted to mention also about the NRTA, the NYCHA Resident Training Academy. Our projections for employment for the academy are based on year-to-year evaluations of projections, I should say, about employment. And so, it's definitely ambitious and exciting to have the opportunity for residents, but it's also an important component to manage the actual jobs that will be in the pipeline for that respective year. So that's another point that we may have to reconsider. And lastly, with regard to the recycling leaders, I know in the past there's been some work with I believe it may have been Grow NYC, but I have to confirm. And there were some small pilots where residents were empowered and retained for opportunities with recycling. And so I'm going to look further into that and contribute in greater detail with my committee, as well as with David and Kerry, so that I can just bring everyone up to speed on practices from the past that could be reviewed, researched, leveraged, and built upon, so that this could really gain some momentum as we move forward. Thanks, you.
Josephine. And for those who don't know, NYCHA's Reese Department is the department of NYCHA that focuses all around on training programs, education programs, connecting people to employment. So anything that's really at all connected to all these good things, that's the go-to department within NYCHA. In the interest of time, any other questions or suggestions, anything else, put them in the chat, email me, let me know afterwards, and want us to go right ahead to the next section, which is kind of exciting. So we're going to go into working group reports, starting with specifically training and wraparound, which today is going to have a special show and tell. So I'm going to pass it over to Diane. Hopefully Diane's tag is working, and then Diane is going to introduce Brian, and we're going to hear it all.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, David. Most recently, the Training and Wraparound Working Group has been working on the logic model. We've also been working on the group's priority goal, which is to establish replicable, scalable approaches for job seekers to understand and enter a quality career path through training in green careers. To meet this goal, during the last few months, the working group has put together questionnaires and documents to collect data from members to create an asset mapping tool that will provide a visual and textual compilation of the resources and how they connect with each other. Brian Licata from Staten Island Chamber of Commerce has taken the information and collected to populate the data onto Kumo, a mapping tool, and today he's presenting the proof of concept in its initial stages. Thank you, Brian. If you could take it from there.
Thank you, Diane. So as everyone knows, trying to figure out who's doing what in the workforce sphere is really complicated. So what we decided to do was try to figure out a visual representation that goes hand in hand with our Excel sheet. So what I'm going to do is share my screen real quick so everyone can see what we're looking at. So what you're able to see right now is a visualization of our map. Now, our map, I will call this is version 1, it's in beta version. So this is just a work in progress. On the left-hand side, you'll see that the Green Economy Network has a nice description of what JobsFirst is looking to do. And then on the right-hand side, we have a square map that has a bunch of circles, lines, and I'm going to explain what everything is. So what we were able to do is we were able to pull in about 12 of the entities that are currently doing work in the green economy. The goal is to populate this map with 80 to 100 different entities. These circles are called nodes. The nodes represent the businesses, the nonprofits, workforce development, city, state, federal agencies, and the red lines are the connections. What you're seeing right now is, and I'm going to move this over so it's a little bit bigger. You are seeing that we have a legend on the left-hand side that explains who is doing what. Around each of the circles, there are color codes, whether they're doing advanced training, apprenticeship, career exploration, focusing on economic inclusion, if it's a funding nodule, or if they're focusing on green jobs. And some of them have multiple different colors around them. What we look at on the top is we can actually select, and if we hover over, which of the entities are doing employment, career exploration, if one of their metrics is enrolling in an advanced program, if they provide an industry certificate, or if they provide temporary employment. On the bottom, we can simultaneously focus in on what was in our legend, who is doing advanced training, who offers an apprenticeship program. Now, this is nice because we're able to see a visual. Without the data, the visual is not really a complete picture. So if we touch any of these nodules, on the left-hand side, we are going to get a full description. So right now, I just clicked on Green City Force. They offer advanced training, career exploration, green jobs. It's participant facing. They offer upskilling, and they work with out of school, out of work populations. We have their address, the age of their participants, the area of work that they focus in on, who is the contact person we should reach out to, what is the description of their agency, an email address for Tanya, where their funding comes from. The image is actually the nodules image. I just have to upload that, and that was why you were able to see that. Let me show you again. Right over here in that little piece. We were also able to include the industry of workforce programs. Right now, I just loaded in sustainability and agriculture. We have their outcome metrics for those programs: career exploration, employment, enrolling in an advanced certificate, gain an industry certificate, and then the population that they work with. I can click on others just to show you examples. For instance, The Association for Energy Affordability focuses on advanced training, career exploration, green jobs. We have their address, the age of the participants that they work with. Their areas of work are currently building science training, heat pump training, building operator training, healthy home training. We have the contact person, their description once again, how to reach out to Diane, their funding. We also have a specific program URL in case anyone wanted to click on it to register for that program. Now, as we look at these different nodules, if we hover over any of them, they will show us who is connected to them. The real question we have is, what information do you not see that you would like to see either in the visual side of this map or on the data side that we're representing on the left? And keep in mind that I said this is the beta version. We want to populate this with somewhere between 80 to 100 of these little circles. We would like to show the connections that they have to nonprofits, workforce development, city agencies, state agencies, and we would even like to be able to show the connections that they have to each other. So with that in mind, I would like to see what kind of questions that you have, or if I see that people are putting things in the chat, I could possibly answer some of those.
So Brian, mostly what you're seeing in chat is people so excited and loving what you're doing, which is great. You are very much on the right track. And Brian has been working on this for just a week. And we have him for another 3 probably. So you could only imagine what will be there. And Brian, I know over the course of the next 3 weeks, we will probably be reaching out to folks to get any information that we need. But there was a question I saw fly by. What is the data source, and is the connection updated in real time as you update the source?
This is a great question. Right now, the data source is a Google document that I've uploaded into the Kumo platform. When we finalize this map, the data will be taken from the Google document. It will be downloaded into an Excel file. It will be uploaded into the system. And that will keep all of our nodules, the circles, in a static position. Otherwise, what happens is right now when I share the link with everybody, all of the nodules are going to just kind of move around. So in the end, we will be able to upload new information, probably on a weekly or a monthly basis, by downloading the Google document that's uploaded in real time, and then uploading the Excel document back into Kumo. I like data, so for me, this is fun. I know not everybody feels the way, so I hope you like the data part. On the opposite side, let me just show you the table. This is where you see it says there's a remote access, and everyone can click on the remote access, and I'll share the link with you, and they'll be able to actually see how are we putting in the data and what the connections are between each of the different nodules. Let's see.
Brian,
Brian, question. The spreadsheet that Dave created that was recently shared with the group, and I believe went out to the entire network, is the one that we should be referring to, and should, if I'm thinking correctly, Dave, if you might add to this, the document will be reviewed with everyone before it's uploaded, correct? Fully uploaded?
So right now, what I was doing was I was taking the information from the 3 or 4 different documents. I was then reformatting them. I think part of the process is to streamline how people can answer so that we have quantitative data and have very set things that people can pick from when answering questions, so that all of the nodes are easily able to interact with each other rather than having open-ended answers.
Exactly. So the one that we have is, in a way, not quite optimized for direct feed into Kumu, but it is optimized for regular people to give regular information. So we'll work on making it so that the kind of information that is put in is easier to feed directly into Kumu. This can involve, among other things, a lot of drop downs, unsurprisingly. That way we have the information that goes in be more consistent. That makes it easier for both on a technical end of programming and on a visual end of having the data look consistent, so that when we filter by X, we see all of the X and not miss half of them. We'll get into those boring details later. If you have any questions or want to contribute to any of this, jump into one of the training and wraparound meetings, or just reach out to Diane, Brian, me with questions, suggestions, information, everything else.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, David.
Certainly. In the interest of time, I'm going to go super brief share outs for the next bits. So if we can hear from Jennifer or Stephanie about employer partnerships and economic opportunities.
Great. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. No, you go ahead, Stephanie. I was just going to say, I don't want to follow that group, but okay. Tough act to follow. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. So to keep it really brief, we are not quite at the product stage. We are building out our strategic plan for the elements that we actually need to build the job site. And we're also focusing in that strategic plan on the partnerships that are going to be needed, not only for the build out of the site, but also for the longevity of the project. Stephanie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I'm going with brief. I'm like, I'm in, I'm out. I don't have a map.
Yeah. We appreciate brief right now because we're watching the clock and not knowing exactly when the council member will arrive. So that's perfect. Thanks.
Actually, maybe in the interest of time, can have Jen Mitchell talk about.
Oh, it's Tanya.
Tanya's okay. I was going to say, could do one combo for report out and introductions. Tanya will update us on what strategy is doing. Then we'll pass straight over to Jen, who will introduce.
Oh, no, we have Christine from Kingsborough presenting.
Oh, great. Sorry. The many agenda changes yesterday. So let's hear from Tanya then, and we will go.
Okay. Apologies for being off camera. I'm in transit, but very briefly, it's really exciting. Happy Earth Month, by the way, to hear all of this great work and all of this engagement. And what we'd love to have behind that is all of these organizations who've been consistently participating to submit your lead intent letters, because we're really trying to land on the governance and the structure and the way forward around how decisions are made. And so we've collectively made a lot of progress, but really need organizations to, quote unquote, commit to what level of leadership and engagement going forward you want to have as a formal basis. So the strategy group has really been trying to land on what is the governance and leadership and way forward? And to do that, we need clarity on which organizations want to be driving those decisions. So there are lots more, but I'm just going to leave it at that for the sake of time. So if you are an organization that's not yet made a decision about your lead intent letter, please try to do that ASAP. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya. And I think I don't know if there was another group that was supposed to do an update now, but we're going to save it for after the council member, because Council Member Gennaro just joined us. So hi, Council Member Gennaro. Happy Earth Month.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Am I in the right
No problem.
place?
What?
Am I in the right place? Can people hear me?
You are in
the
right place.
Okay.
You are in the right place. You look perfect. I'm going to give a little intro for the whole group to get to know you a little bit, and then we look forward to hearing from you. So welcome. You are in the right place. You are with the Green Economy Network. We are a collaboration
it says it right here.
of about. Oh, good. Well, great. So then you know who we are. I'm going to tell everybody who you are. So Councilmember Gennaro is a council member for District 24 in Queens. He was first elected back in 2001 and has been a council member on and off throughout those years. He can tell you more details about that. Importantly for this group, it is that he is chair of the Environmental Protection Committee. He also sits on a lot of other committees, including Waterfront and Resiliency, which is relevant to us as well, and Sanitation and Solid Waste Management, relevant to us as well. What I loved, I had to dig deep because, you know, your bio is not on the City Council website yet, but you did a lot of environmental policy and protection work in your career thus far, and actually your work was celebrated or at least documented in 2 documentaries. One called Fuel in 2008, which was a movie about biofuels, and one called Gasland in 2010 about fracking and the oil industry. You also have been an adjunct professor for poli-sci and environmental policy at Queens College. And so we are excited to welcome you here today to help us celebrate Earth Month and to hear about your priorities as chair of the Environmental Protection Committee. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Wow. Thank you, Jennifer, on that wonderful introduction that was written by my mother. I appreciate that. And yeah, I've been on the council a long time. Actually, my time working on environmental issues from the council goes back to 1990, when I became the environmental policy advisor to the Committee on Environmental Protection in 1990. I did that for many years, so I ran for the council in 2001. And then upon being elected to the council, I immediately went from policy advisor to the council to the committee, to chair of the committee. We did that for 12 years. We had a really good run. I authored more than 50 pieces of major legislation, and in talking about jobs, some of the laws I passed became like major industries, like, local law 87. If you Google local law 87, that's doing the energy audits. That's become an industry. And I tried to do everything I could in order to promote sane environmental policies, sound environmental policies, and jobs. I mean, I could go on and on. And so I did that for 12 years, and then I became Deputy Commissioner of the State Department of Environmental Conservation. I did that for 6 years until I decided it was time to, come back to the council and take care of some unfinished business. And so here I am, once again, chair of the committee with a, brand new council of people that have, many ideas. And now, 2022 is very different than 2002 when I started, when I had to, wrestle people to the ground to get them to pay attention, to environmental issues and to the, crisis facing us, and how we could, and should tackle that crisis, and how we should, create jobs, during the process. That was a very difficult message to get across in 2002. It's not difficult to get across in 2022. And so this is a, great opportunity for me to use the benefit of my, long experience to help shape and guide some of the things that we really, that really need to be done in New York City to, green the environment, to create environmental justice, and to, and to grow the green jobs that we need. Lost my train of thought there for a second. It's kind of like, senior moment. Also got so much that I want to say. It's hard to crystallize it all the time. But I do have a couple things here. With regard to priorities, in 2008, I passed the New York City Climate Protection Act, which mandated, wasn't goals, mandated greenhouse gas reduction in the New York City government sector of 30% by 2017 and 30% in the city overall by 2030. And that has since been superseded by local law 97, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But one of the reasons why I wanted to come back was that, the city, which has a lot of resources, couldn't figure out how to meet those mandates and reduce city government greenhouse emissions by 30% by 2017. By the time we got to 2017, they'd only done about 20%. That was very unacceptable. I was disappointed that people didn't sue the city. So I figured I had to come back myself and make sure this got done. And so now we're in the era of, Local 97, which is the city's, greenhouse gas reduction law that will lead to 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050. And the city moved the goalposts for itself, saying, okay, we didn't get to the 30% reduction by 2017, but now we're going to get to a 40% reduction by 2025. And 2025 is not that long from now, and they're only about 23% reduction now. So we really have a lot of work that has to happen. And so how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through Local 97 compliance. Local 97, as many people on this webinar know, is really like the linchpin of how we green the city, make the city much more healthy and create a lot of jobs. And people talk about the climate aspects of Local 197, and it is important to do that, even though the 303 square miles of New York City cannot really have much of a global impact on planet Earth, which everyone knows is, I think, 197 million square miles. Everybody knows that. So our 303 square miles are not going to affect 197 million square miles, but we can create a model for other cities, states, and countries to, replicate. And here's like the great little secret regarding, reducing, greenhouse gas emissions in New York City. We have the authority as local government to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, which would be, mostly, CO2. Most people do that. We also have, methane and other things, but CO2 is what we are empowered to regulate. We do not have the ability to regulate the other so-called criteria air pollutants that are regulated by the Federal Clean Air Act. And that is done through the state DEC, which is the agent of the federal government, and getting us to meet the Clean Air Act with regard to where we need to be with regard to the Clean Air Act, so-called criteria air pollutants. But when you reduce greenhouse gases, CO2, you necessarily reduce all the other bad pollutants that are governed by the Clean Air Act, which are technically we're not allowed to regulate. So we're kind of regulating them through the back door, because by bringing down CO2 in New York City, we're not only helping the climate, by a small degree, we're a small city given the size of the earth, but we're having a huge impact on local, clean air benefits. So it's a huge clean air benefit, directly to the residents of the city of New York anytime we, bring down greenhouse gas. And so a lot of people make the argument, we can't really solve the climate problem here in New York City, so why bother? First of all, everyone should bother. And there's this other huge impact in making our local air quality cleaner with regard to the criteria air pollutants that we're not allowed to govern, but we sort of are by doing the greenhouse thing. I hope everyone followed that. That's very, very critically important. And here's where we add in the element of environmental justice and jobs. And by taking Local 97, which we're having a hearing on April 13th, and I have my legislative director, Nabi, should be listening in. If you could put up in the chat, the information on the hearing that we're going to be having next, I guess it's Wednesday. I know it's April 13th. I think that's Wednesday. And people can tune into that. It'll be live streamed or whatever. And that's where we're going to be taking up the issue of Local Law 97 compliance with regard to how the Adams administration is intending to do that. They do have a little latitude on how they do that, but it's critically important that we, work with them I'm happy to say that the Adams administration and its chief climate officer, Rit Agrawal, who's also the DEP commissioner, is fully committed to getting that done. We're not getting any pushback on that. It's just a matter of how we do that. And some of the best outcomes from local law 97 compliance are going to be in areas that have been epicenters of environmental justice for generations. And all those, because most of pollutants that foul the air in New York City come from buildings. Depending upon who you listen to, it's anywhere between 70 to 79% of all pollutants that foul New York City's air come from buildings, and the transportation sector, in its entirety, is only about 21%. So buildings are the big emitters, and we have to do a better job there, which is what Local Law 97 is all about. And so that's Local Law 97 compliance. That's a huge thing. I can go on all day, but trust me that I'm going to make sure that that happens. And also I'm pushing very strongly, as I'm sure many members of this call are pushing for, with regard to the tier 4 renewable energy projects that are going before the Public Service Commission next week. As most people know, there is a state mandate to green the state's grid and to green the city's grid. 70% by 2030 and 100% by 2040. We can't really make that happen without these tier 4 projects, which were the result of a NYCHA competition. Because we are dealing with an emergency that we're going to apply, they were going to approve, that is NYCHA, one huge renewable energy project, but now they approved 2. One is called Green Path New York. It's going to be a wide swath of upstate New York. There's going to be wind power and solar panel and solar power that will be transmitted to New York City, and that's one project. And the other would be the Champlain Hudson, sometimes known by the acronym CHIPPY. That would be Canadian hydropower. And these are going to create all kinds of union jobs, and there's just no way for us to get our grid greened unless and until we do these projects. These projects do not constitute the ceiling. They're really the floor of what we want to do, but we really have to get these done. Otherwise, we're going to have big problems. And for example, at the end of the last session in December, I shepherded and negotiated the gas ban bill that is going to eliminate fossil fuels and all new construction in New York City. But that law is dependent upon having a green grid. If we don't have a green grid, then the only thing the gas ban bill is going to, we could go backwards instead of forward, because now fossil fuels are burned in buildings throughout the city. But to the extent that we shift the burden when we go to electric, if that electric is coming from a dirty grid, all we will have succeeded in doing is transferring the burden of that fossil fuel output from buildings across the city to areas of the city that are host to power plants that, as I said, have been epicenters of environmental justice for many years. And so in passing the gas ban bill, which is a great thing to do, we want to go forwards, not backwards. And that is completely dependent on us having the green grid that will give us the environmental justice that we're looking for and the green jobs that we're looking for. I don't want to take up too much time. Also, stormwater and flooding is, a huge issue that I want to undertake. The last time I was on the council as chair, I passed the first comprehensive stormwater management plan in the city to really tackle the issue of how we manage stormwater in a better way, given the more violent and frequent and, very productive in terms of rainfall storms that we're getting. It was only a couple of months ago that, Central Park got 1.94 inches of rain in 1 hour, which is the most it's gotten since we've been measuring rainfall. And 1 month later, we got 3 inches. And so, getting, 100-year storms every couple of months, we live in a new time, and we cannot build enough sewer infrastructure in order to manage that water. So we did the stormwater management plan, and we have all the rain gardens and the bioswales and everything else. And that was really done, the last stormwater management plan was really done with a view towards how we minimize the amount of combined sewer overflow. That's a whole story in itself, because we're under a consent order to not to, discharge, polluted water that in rainstorms bypasses the sewage treatment plants because they become overwhelmed. That was what the first stormwater management plan was really about, to try to minimize CSOs. Now, the new stormwater management plan, which we're calling Stormwater Management Plan 2.0, will be more about what we do to manage, flooding and how it impacts the residents of the people people who live in New York City. Not just the coastal waters. We see all the sewer backups, and part of the package is going to be for the city to fund backflow prevention devices in buildings. There is precedent for the city making investments in private properties like we did with the toilet rebate program 25 years ago. In order to reduce water consumption, we're going to do the same thing with backflow prevention devices. And so, that's one of my main priorities, is to how we manage stormwater better. When it comes to all manifestations of, climate change adaptation, that is, I kind of share that responsibility with the Committee on Resiliency and Waterfronts. So it's something that I'll be kind of sharing that duty with Chair Kagan, Ari Kagan for Brooklyn, who's a terrific guy and a great chairman. And so those are some of my environmental priorities, and the jobs that I want to see grow from that, and the environmental justice that we want to bring. And so I'm happy to entertain questions, and I hope I haven't gone on too long and worn out my welcome, which I do a lot. Sorry about that.
No. It's great. Thank you. I mean, we're really appreciative of you joining us this morning. Our whole goal here is to kind of take advantage of this moment where there is all these investments being made in climate mitigation strategies, and find out how to best train the folks that we want to make sure that the jobs are connected to people in the most inclusive and most equitable ways. And so I guess, and people can put questions in the chat, but I would love to just ask you, what would be your advice to us to how to make sure that we're connecting job seekers who have traditionally not been included in many of these opportunities to them, and what kind of investments in workforce development do you foresee coming, and how are you advocating for them? And then feel free to put other questions in the chat, folks.
Yeah, sure. One of my first, meetings with the new DEP commissioner, Red Agarwal, who's also the chief climate officer, was specifically about how we cultivate green jobs and grow the green economy. That is going to be a cooperative effort, between folks in the administration who are dealing with the climate crisis and everything that we're doing, as well as other entities within the administration that deal with economic development. But I'm really kind of putting it on him to work with us to sort of like lead the charge in that. And some groups like yourself have reached out to me. You know, one that I've been that reached out to me very early. You know, different organization than you folks, like a different coalition. But that would be Climate Jobs New York, and sort of like there's like an offshoot of that, which would be like the Healthy Schools Network. And you know, when I heard about this, you know, I'm very busy and running around, but it's something that I wanted to participate in because even though I've been dealing with Climate Jobs New York and the Healthy Schools Network and all, you know, the jobs that they want to bring, you know, to both the union and, you know, non-union sector, I want to work with as many entities that I can that are looking to, you know, grow the green economy. So I'm really here for me so that I can, you know, get more knowledge about what you're trying to do and to give direction, you know, to my legislative you know, director Nabi Kaur, who is, you know, either listening in or watching in, or she's out there somewhere, to make sure that we, you know, that we loop in the Green Economy Network when we have discussions about how we grow green jobs. So it's so the sort of like stage zero of this process would be to find out who the groups are that are making a concerted effort to try to make this happen, and, you know, kind of bring them all together so that everybody gets a slice of the pie. You know, everybody gets to make the proper input. And again, you know, first and foremost, I am the environmental chair, and you know, but I see myself as very much and someone who has, you know, created thousands of green jobs, you know, with the laws that I've passed, like Local Law 87 with the energy audits, and you know, and everything else that I've done. I see myself, you know, very much at the forefront of, you know, I don't want to, you know, usurp the authority of the Economic Development Committee of the City Council, but there's, you know, there's a whole green jobs movement that is inextricably linked to what we're doing on the legislative frontier. I mean, you know, we do these laws, and then like, you know, and then like jobs fall out. They just, you know, if you build it, they will come. So when we're, you know, doing all those initiatives, you know, like the gas ban bill, like, you know, local 97 enforcement, you know, like everything we're doing regarding stormwater, it's going to take people, you know, doing these jobs. And so I have kind of like two jobs away. One is chairman of the committee that deals with the substance and how we need to move forward, you know, move the city forward on a climate and environmental front, and also, you know, making sure that the jobs component is happening fairly, you know, and equitably. It's kind of an oblique answer, but you know, there you have it.
No,
so we want to.
No problem. I recognize we're sure.
So they want to know who you are and like what you're doing, and invite me to all your stuff, and then Nabi will make sure you're looped in as we have, you know, as like the green jobs conversation rolls out. And then also, one of the things we're going to be doing, I mean, probably in concert with like the Committee on Economic Development, you know, we have a hearing in the pipeline already. We don't have a date for it, but, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do is, you know, have a formal hearing where we can, you know, orchestrate, you know, all the various entities that are trying to create, you know, green jobs, and see if we can make some good marriages there. And so that I think is, you know, good fodder for a city council hearing for groups like yours and green and you know, Climate Jobs New York and the Healthy Schools Network to all come together and, you know, work with us and work with the city as we, you know, green the city and green the economy.
Great. Well, Thank you, thank you, thank you. There were a couple more questions in the chat, but we actually only have 3 minutes left and we have to do some housekeeping. So we are so appreciative you joined us today. I think I speak on behalf of many members of the Green Economy Network that we look forward to future partnering. We'd love to have you visit some of our jobs training programs and see us all in
I'm sitting
action.
here. I'll wear a suit. I'll do my whole thing, you know?
Okay, well, we will. Everyone, you heard it here first. Invite the council member to your next jobs training program. And thank you, council member, for being part of the Green Economy Network today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure to be with all of you, and Navi will put my contact information in the chat, and everyone should feel free to reach out to me. And I want to be a resource for everybody on this call, for you and 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 you. Okay, there you go. All right, thank you.
All right, you'll get 44 emails with invitations later today. Take care.
My lucky day. My lucky day. Take care. Bye. Bye.
That was excellent. Thanks to the councilman. Thanks, Jen. I'm going to be super fast. There's obviously a bunch of other things that we were going to cover today that we did not get to cover, but that's actually great. It means that we have so much good stuff going on that we can't pack it into one meeting. So next month, we're going to hear from Christine talking about the student profiles that we're going to talk about today. We'll talk more about Kumu. We'll talk more about a bunch of other stuff. For now, want to make sure that if anyone has any questions, suggestions about what they want to hear in upcoming meetings, reach out to me. If you are not in a working group and have questions about what's going on in the working groups, or question about what's happening in a different working group, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll connect you to the key people. We will be sending out a follow-up email with more information, since we don't have much time right now, including the link to register for next time. Actually, this time it's the same link to register as was today. So if you already have that link, great. There will be a quick survey at the end. If you would fill it out, that'll be helpful in doing our planning. Also, if, as Tanya was mentioning earlier, if you have not filled out the partnership lead intention form, and that's a thing that you want to do and are allowed to do, I know some entities, especially government ones, not allowed to, please do that. And then also we will try to, I don't want to say finish, but make good progress on our logic model towards our system of being more advanced form of governance. So won't take any more time for now. Thank you all for joining today. Hope it was a useful session. Please reach out to me with any comments, questions, or suggestions. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to hang on later for this call. So if anyone wants to stick around and has any questions or anything else, please feel free to stick around.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks everyone for coming. Happy Earth Month. If there are Earth Month events that you want us to help spread the word about, feel free to send us an email and we'll get it out to this group.